Hey everyone, it's Duc, founder of Developers Academy, and you are watching Code Hangout episode number 28. I can't believe it's 28 already. So in this episode of Code Hangout, I reply to many of your questions. Is that many students ask me to create a walkthrough screens tutorial using UIPageViewController. Although it is quite simple, but it has some kind of like configurations. So let's learn how to do this using a walkthrough screen to use a page view controller. Many of you, when you are using apps these days, the first time that you launch an app, the app shows you a walkthrough screens. It allows you to teach the users to how to use the app, what the app is all about. Is very wonderful ways to and very customizable way to do this. So let's go right down the link right down below. Download the Star project, which one you see is next to me right there. Download the Star project and let's get started. Here's how our starter project looks like. This project displays most of our courses or program at Developers Academy, and I hope that you will check these programs and courses out. Now, when you go to the main.storyboard, you see we already have a page view controller inside our storyboard, and next to this is a walkthrough view controller. The page view controller has a custom class of page view controller. This page view controller is a UI page view controller, and indeed when you go to that, it is a subclass of UI page view controller. Let me see, here we go, right? And the walkthrough view controller is a UI view controller. And let me explain why do we have these two classes and why do we must have these two classes. Outside of that, the project is very simple. We have a tab bar controller and some navigation controllers inside that. Okay, nothing related to our page view controller and our walkthrough screens. Now, the tab bar controller will be the initial view controller, and the logic here is when the view is first loaded, or the courses table view first loaded, we check in the user default to see if this is the first time the user ever launched the app. Then, if it is the first time the user ever launched the app, then we'll display the page view controller or the walkthroughs view controller. Otherwise, we didn't do anything. If it is the first time, then we'll display that. Okay, we can instantiate a new instance of the page view controller from storyboard in code, right? Now, let's go into the slides here. The page view controller is the reason why we have the page view controller and the walkthrough view controller is that the page view controller is very much like a navigation controller or a tab bar controller. It is just a container controller with Datasource and a delegate. Okay, the Datasource will be the view controllers or the walkthrough view controllers that we will need to provide to the page view controller, and the delegate tells us what is the current page that is showing, or what is the previous page, or what is the next page. Okay, that is the reason why we have the data source and the delegate. Now, if you go into the page view controller, click into that and goes to the attribute inspector, you will see the transition style of the page view controller over here. We can have the horizontal or vertical. Okay, that should be obvious. I recommend you to check it out just to play and play around with that. The transition style, we have another transition style. In this case, we use the scroll, which is just a continuous scroll like this. We have another one called page curl. This page curl, it works just like the iBooks, which a page curling like that. Okay, it should be very. It doesn't relate to our walkthrough screen, so we'll use the scrolling. So let me go here. The first step, let's go into our walkthrough view controller and see how it looks like. Inside here, I already create some IB outlet and IB action for you, so we don't have to control dragging anymore. Okay, all of these IB outlets are from our walkthrough view controller. one very great thing that we have the UI or Datasource separate from that is we can have any kind of UI inside that walkthrough view controller, even some fancy animation. Okay, in here we just use very simple one, but I really recommend you, if you can use some animation, use it. Very simple. Now, first, this data model, we have a mark here, has some index. What is that index? Well, the data source of the page view controller is indeed an array of the walkthroughs view controllers, right? So we have an index, so we can keep track of that, because inside the page, maybe we have the next, click the next, or click the start, so we can dismiss this walkthrough view controllers. Okay, we will talk about that. And we have other information like the header text, the image name, the description text inside the screen. So when the view is first loaded, let's display all of our UIs. First, we have the header label to be the header text. We have the description label to be the description text. Let's have the image name. The image view.image is UI image, named with the image name. When the user clicks the start button, then we will dismiss our walkthrough view controllers or the page view controller. So let's do that. In the IB action of func start click, we will do this. Let's the user defaults equals ns user defaults dot standard user defaults. Maybe we'll run to see why we don't have that. Now, the logic here is when we click the start button inside the start screen or inside the walkthrough screens, right? We want to tell the user default or some case of storage that we already launched the app for the first time. We already show the walkthrough screens and the user already dismissed that walkthrough screen. So never show that walkthroughs anymore. After we get the user default, we'll do user default dot set bool, which is set a boolean value for a key in the user default. The bool here is true and the key is displayed walkthrough. Okay, it means that in the default user default we shows that we already display the walkthrough screens. Then we just self.dismiss view controller animated to be true and completion is nil. Now, the question is, where does this come from? How do we know that we can do self.dismiss view controller animated true completion nil? Well, where did we start everything? Where did we show this walkthroughs view controller, or in other words, the page view controller? Let's figure out how about that. In the courses table view controller, let's go to that class. Here's our project navigator, and here we go, the controller, and the courses table view controller, which is the initial view controller of our app. Basically it is. Then we want to show in the view did load, we want to call display walkthroughs. But this display walkthroughs hasn't been implemented. So let's implement this. First, we want to check if this is the first time that we ever launch our app. So if let's user default equals ns user default dot standard user default. Okay, we have that standard user default. Then we want to check the let's displayed walkthroughs, which is we set previously to be the user default dot bool for key, and the key here is displayed walkthroughs, right? Want to make sure that we did this correctly, otherwise this will be a wrong key. Okay, then if we haven't displayed the walkthrough screens, if we not display the walkthrough, then we will display that. Now how we can display that? I hope that you, if you didn't, then great. I will show you how we can instantiate a new storyboard instance of a view controller from storyboard. If let's the page view controller equals to storyboard, which is a property of the view controller, dot instantiate view controller with identifier, and the identifier I give this view controller is a page view controller. Okay, now let me show you what is that identifier comes from. Goes back into the main.storyboard and open up the page view controller, clicks onto that, and in the identity inspector here, we have an identity, and this is the storyboard ID page view controller. Make sure you set that. Alright, let's goes back into the courses table view controller. Now after we get this instance of the page view controller, we want to present that. So self.present view controller, and the view controller here is page view controller, animated is true and completion is nil. So now we display the page view controller, but the page view controller has no idea, doesn't have anything to do with it, doesn't have any idea how to display things yet. Let's go into page view controller. Here we go. Now the page view controller doesn't have anything yet, so our job now is to use the walkthrough view controllers as the data source for our page view controller. Let's do that. In the page view controller, we just have some hard-coded data for our walkthrough screens. We have an array of page headers, we have an array of page images, page descriptions, things like that. Okay. Then now in the view.load, I want to make sure that the self.data source is this class. The data source of this page view controller. Remember that page view controller is a UIPageViewController, and this class will declare that as the data source of the page view controller. Okay. Once we have the data source, let's implement that using a new extension. I just have a habit of whenever we want to extend a new protocol, then we write an extension so we can have, let's say we implement different protocols, then we will display that. We have extension of the page view controller, and we will implement the UIPageViewController data source. Let's go into this UIPageViewController data source and see what are the methods in this data source. Here we go. We have a public protocol here. We have two methods. The first one is page view controller, view controller before view controller, which is the view controller right before the current view controller, right? The next one we have is view controller after view controller. That one will return a UI view controller that will be rendered the next one. And we also have some things like presentation count for page view controller or the presentation index for page view controller. We will use the first two methods in this protocol, and the later two I recommend you to check it out if you want to implement further on. Okay, so let's implement the first one. The first method is page view controller after view controller. So here we will just return nil first, and then above there we have the page view controller and view controller before view controller. Here we will just return nil for now. So let's talk about this page view controller after view controller first. What is this? Well, in order to do that, we want to have the index. The index is view controller as a walkthrough view controller, right? And after we got that, or actually let me walk through view controller. Here we have the walkthrough view controller as a walkthrough view controller dot index. Remember that inside our walkthrough view controller we have a mark of index over here, so we know that walkthrough view controller, that view controller is at what index. Okay, just imagine it is like a table view cell. A table view cell has a property called index path, right? Just to mark it, the position of that in the data source. So we have the index. Then we just do index plus plus increment the index. Then we'll return a self dot view controller at index, and the index is index. We have a new index, and we will display the view controller at that index. Now, what is this method? The view controller at index. Well, it is declared inside this, a navigation mark over here. We have the next page with index. We will talk about that later on. And we have a method called view controller at index. Here we just return nil. Now let's implement this method. First, I want to check if the index is something like ns not found. Okay, just to make sure that we didn't find this index and someone passed that into our method, it will crash. So we just check that, and we also check if the index is less than 0, because if we are at the very first view controller, then the previous one, the index will be -1, right? So the index is less than 0, it is not good. And also, if the index greater than or equals to the self.page descriptions.count, which is just the data source of this, then it is the last page, right? We have the first page doesn't have any before one, and the last page doesn't have any after view controller. Then in this case, we just return nil. Otherwise, we'll create a new walkthrough view controller, and then we'll assign the appropriate data, and then we'll return that. If let walkthrough view controller equals to storyboard.instantiate a new view controller with identifier, and here we do have the walkthrough view controller, and we cast it as a walkthrough view controller to make sure that we have that. Then we do walkthrough view controller dot image name to be page images index. We also have the header view, the header text to be page headers index. We also have walkthrough dot description text to be the page descriptions index. Okay, and we also have the walkthrough view controller dot index to be the index, right? And then we just return the walkthrough view controller like that. Then we are good to go. Now I made a mistake over here. I returned the walkthrough view controller outside of the scope of this if let binding. Then we have an error. It's called use of unresolved identifier walkthrough view controller. The reason for that is if this if let is out of scope, which is this one, then Xcode doesn't know what is the walkthrough view controller. So I will just return over here. Okay. Otherwise, in here we just return nil. So it should make sense for you. Okay. So it's very simple, right? We have the view controller at the index. We check if the index is valid. If it is, then we'll instantiate a new instance of the page walkthrough view controller from the storyboard, and we'll put every data, the data model inside that class, and we return that. Otherwise, we return nil. Now we have the view controller at the index. Let's implement the rest of our data source over here. Okay, this one is good. Oh, this is walkthrough, not walkthrough. Okay. Oh, all right. I see. This is not the walkthrough view controller. This is this view controller over here. See, it is the parameter that we get from this delegate method. So view controller over here. I hope that you pointed out. Alright, so that is the view controller after view controller. Let's implement the view controller before view controller. So this one should be very familiar. Instead of increment the index, we just get the index from the walkthrough view controller, and then we decrement the index, and then we return the view controller. var index equals view controller as a walkthrough view controller dot index, right? And then we will do index minus minus, which is the shorthand for the decrement. And then we return the self.viewController at the index of index. Then we have that view controller before view controller. Now we have the page view controller before view controller, and view controller after view controller. We have the before, we have the after, but how about the first? How about the first one? So when the first one is launched, we should display the very first walkthrough view controller. So in the view did load, let's display that. We want to check if let the start walkthrough view controller equals to self.viewController at index of 0. If we do have that, then we will set the view controllers, which is start walkthrough view controller, in the direction of forward. Okay, animated is true and completion is nil. Then we set those controllers inside that direction. This is a method of the UIPageViewController. You can see we have things like gesture recognizers, view controllers. We have double-sided. Okay, has very careful documentation over here. Check it out. So we have that, the first walkthrough view controller. Let's run the project to see how it looks like. Alright, now our project runs, but we didn't see any walkthrough view controllers. The reason for that is maybe I already create those, run this project. So I will cancel this project and I will delete this project like this. Okay, see, I will just delete the project like that, because so that we can delete the app and the user default of the app. Let's run it once again to see how it looks like. Here we go. Yes, we have this one, and we can slide from left to right. Right, very nice. Now there are several things we need to discuss about this one. The first one is this next button. We have the next button, but when we click into this next button right now, nothing happens. And the second one is, look what happens when we slide from left to right. And notice this design, I think, is very beautiful. It's great, looks great. And you can, if you have some time, you can put some animation inside that, put some animation fancy ones. Okay. In this one, let's just discuss the mechanics of the page view controller. So the first one we need to talk about is the next button. When we click into the next button, we should show the next page. And the second one is this control, the page control. This is the page control, only these circles. Okay, those are the page controls. Now, a page view controller does have a default page controls, and it is incredibly easy to just one line of code and you can have that page control. But the problem with that page control is that it is not customizable. It has a black background and you cannot change that. If you want to have a customized page controls, then you have to goes to main.storyboard, inside the walkthrough view controller or whatever the controller that you put into the page view controller, you drag out a page control like this. This is a page control, put in that auto layout and everything like that. Okay, and then connects that an IB outlet to the walkthrough view controller. Then we have an IB outlet of page control over here. Then we have the page control. But the problem is the page control doesn't have any information about the index of the page, of these pages. Now I give you a hint over there. The page control doesn't have any information about the current index of the page. So let's go into the documentation, the header file of the page control to see what it is. This page controls, it has a property called current page. It is just an int. The default is 0, which is the pins of the page control. When we slide that, it always the 0 index. So we can change that, right? It should be very easy. In the viewDidLoad method, beneath here, we will do page control dot, what's that again? Let me see. The current page, right? Page control dot current page to be the index. Let's run it to see how it looks like. It should work. Okay, so here's our app. Now notice we haven't clicked the start button, so the page view controller should still display, right? So here's how our app. Notice when we scroll like this, the page control changes its current page, right? When we scroll like that, and it's now 3, and we scroll back, it is now 2. Good? Okay, so let's deal with the last one is in our project, which is this next button click. When the next button click, we should be able to show the next or the previous, the next view controller, the next walkthrough view controller, right? So let's deal with that. Now, in order to do this, I will go back into the page view controller and I will implement this next page with index. So we have a helper method for the navigation. If let the next walkthrough VC, which is the self.viewController at index 0, okay, I'm sorry, at the index of index +1. Okay, we have this index, so we want to check if we do have the next index. We do have a next view controller, because maybe if this is the last view controller, the last page view controller, then the next one is not available. Then we must check that. It is the same thing as the view controller at the index. We want to check the previous one and the next one. So the next page with index, let me do this. If we do have that next walkthrough view controller, then let's call this set view controllers on again. This set view controllers, next walkthrough view controller in the direction of forward, and the animated is true and completion is nil. Okay. Then inside the next click of the walkthrough view controllers, we just have to call that let page view controller to be the self.parent view controller, and we cast it down as a page view controller. The parent view controller of this walkthrough view controller is a page view controller. So we have the page view controller, and we just call the page view controller dot next page with index of index. Okay, so that should be good. Now, one thing I want to notice is the implementation, the design of this next page with index. Maybe it makes more sense for you if we change the implementation. Instead of index minus plus plus, we change this +1 inside the next page with index, right? We do the index +1 right in here. So it makes more sense for the interface of the next page with index. Okay, just one thing to consider about. So now let's run the project to see how it looks like, and we should complete it by now. There we go. Scroll like this, or we can click the next button. Very nice. And then we can click the start button and we dismiss this, and we have all of the courses and Developers Academy. Alright, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Code Hangout. If you have any questions, feel free to post it right down below at our blog, Or if you love to watch more video tutorials from me every week, every day, subscribe to my channel on YouTube and go to ductran.cl or developersacademy.io and subscribe to our newsletter list. So every week I can send you even more video tutorials. When you enter your name and email to subscribe to our newsletter, I already send you another video after I send you the start project, right? After that video, inside that video, I send you another course, an iOS course I created for you, our new iOS course I want to give you as a free gift, as my thanks for checking out Code Hangout, for supporting me in this channel. So definitely check that out, goes back to your inbox and get that video tutorials series from me. So until next time, I see you in the next episode of Code Hangout. I see you at Developers Academy. Go out there every single day of your life, learn new things, craft your ideas, and contribute to the world.